I sat at the kitchen table, the afternoon sun cutting across the room like a blade. My hands trembled as I held the crumpled screenshot, Ethan's wedding announcement. It wasn't addressed to me. It came from my neighbor's niece, forwarded through 3 different hands before landing in mine. My name wasn't on the guest list, not even in the fine print. I stared at it, hoping I missed something. I adjusted my glasses. Nothing. My thumb hovered over his contact. I hadn't called in weeks. Not since our last awkward conversation. He said he'd been too busy with wedding stuff. I pressed call. Hello. Hey, son, I said, soft. I just saw the wedding announcement. Looks beautiful. I didn't get an invitation, so I thought maybe. He cut in. Yeah, Dad, look, the guest list's tight. Melissa's family is huge. We had to make tough calls. I couldn't speak. The silence filled my lungs like water. I hope you understand, he added. I swallowed. Tough calls, huh? He didn't respond. You know, when your mother died, you couldn't sleep without holding my hand. My voice cracked, but I steadied it. I never thought you'd grow up to cut me out of your life like junk mail. Don't do this, he muttered. It's not personal. Not personal, I repeated. You're getting married and I had to find out from a neighbor. That's not a tough call, Ethan. That's cruelty dressed as convenience. He exhaled, impatient. Dad, it's just one day. Can we not make this a big deal? One day, my knuckles whitened. Ethan, I worked triple shifts to keep your lights on. I sold Mom's violin to pay for your braces. And now I'm not even worth a chair at your wedding. You always make it about the past. Because the past paid for your future. Silence. I could hear the clink of a spoon on glass in the background. Probably Melissa, sitting there smug while I begged for a seat at my own son's life. I'm sorry, he said, but it felt rehearsed. We'll talk after the honeymoon. I stared at the empty seat across from me. I'd left it for your mother since the day she passed. Yeah, I whispered. You go enjoy your wedding. I ended the call. My finger hovered over his name for a long while. Then I deleted it. If anyone's listening, don't make the mistake I did. Don't raise a child to think love is disposable. I sat in silence for a long time, the house echoing with the absence of voices. Outside, a squirrel ran across the porch rail, tail flicking. The world moved on, indifferent. But the sound that stuck with me wasn't the squirrel or the breeze or the ticking clock. It was the sound of a phone ringing, and the silence that followed when no one answered. I stared at the ledger, flipping through the old financial statements like they were funeral programs. Every number, every decimal, had my name behind it. And yet somehow, I'd handed the pen to Ethan and let him rewrite my legacy with it. A year ago, I sat in Helen's office, my lawyer of 30 years. The room smelled like coffee and legal pads. Ethan had just gotten engaged. He came to me glowing like he'd solved life. Dad, I want to build a future, he said. Something stable with Melissa. He'd used words like responsible and grown up. He talked about legacy, how he wanted to protect the estate. It had been a long road getting to that moment. After the years of debt, foreclosure scares, and missed birthdays, I thought, maybe this was the beginning of healing. So I transferred a portion of the estate into a trust under his name. Not all of it, but enough to give him security. I remember signing the documents with a lump in my throat. I thought I was passing the baton. Turns out, I was handing him a knife. Did you include distribution controls? Harold asked me, snapping me out of the fog. He sat across from me at the diner, nursing his 4th refill of black coffee. He was an accountant before retirement, a real numbers man. I trusted him, I muttered. Harold shook his head. Trust is good, oversight is better. He pulled out his old laptop from a worn leather bag. You have a copy of the trust. Filed away somewhere, I said. Haven't looked at it since that day. You should, especially if payments are still routing through your estate account. That hit like a stone in my gut. Wait, what do you mean? Harold raised a brow. You never disconnected the fund from the original estate corpus. I blinked. I assumed Ethan did. That was his responsibility. He leaned back. Then it's very possible you're still the financial engine of that wedding. The thought made my skin crawl. I'd been cut from the guest list but left on the invoice. That night I pulled out the trust agreement from my fireproof box in the basement. I held the crisp folder like it was radioactive. My hands shook. There it was, my signature, my name, my estate, the clause I hadn't thought about in months. Disbursement authorization. Grantor retains full distribution control unless notified in writing of formal use. My heart beat faster. Had Ethan ever sent formal notification of wedding use? I couldn't remember. I ran my thumb over the ink I once signed with pride. Now it burned in my hands. Outside the window, the wind picked up, scattering dead leaves across the porch. I stood there a long time, watching them fall. Each one reminded me of something I gave away too soon, too freely, too blind. Harold's fingers flew across the keyboard like he was cracking a safe. I sat beside him, clutching my coffee like it might steady my nerves. "You sure you want to see this?" he asked. "I need to know, Harold, even if it kills me." He nodded. "All right, let's trace the routing numbers from the trust's disbursement account. If Ethan's been smart, he moved the funds into a private holding. If he's been lazy..." The screen blinked, lines of bank statements loading one after the other. Then Harold stopped, leaned in, and squinted. "Oh, hell no." "What?" I leaned over, heart pounding. He pointed. "This vendor payment, Willow and Sage Catering. Look at the source account." I froze. It wasn't the trust account. It was my old business account. The one tied to Caldwell Woodworks, now dormant, or so I thought. "Ethan doesn't even have access to that," I said. "That account should have been shut down years ago." Harold shook his head. "Looks like someone kept it open, and whoever managed the trust never updated the payment info. You're the legal owner. These withdrawals are coming straight from your estate holdings." My breath caught. He's using my money. Harold looked uneasy. Maybe he doesn't even realize it. Maybe it's the planner. We both knew that wasn't true. An alert pinged on my phone just then. New email from Willow and Sage Catering. I opened it slowly. Wrong recipient, it said. They must have meant to send it to Ethan. But the name on the invoice. Bill to Richard Caldwell. Line items. 175 plated dinners, $12. 250. Cake service, $950. Champagne tower rental, $2,200. Late night taco truck, $3,100. Total due, $18,500. My hands went numb. 18 grand, I whispered. I paid 18 grand for pulled pork and tacos, for a wedding I'm not allowed to attend. I felt something cold creep up my spine. Not just anger, not just hurt, something else, shame, like I'd been publicly stripped and didn't even realize I was naked. "This isn't just a snub," I said. "It's a setup. He wanted me silent, invisible, but still useful." Harold sat back. "This is bad, Rich, real bad. I'm paying for the wedding, and I'm not even getting a chair at the table." I stood up too fast. The room tilted. My eyes burned. "I need to see the rest," I muttered. "The venue, the florist, all of it. I want every receipt." "You sure?" "I'm done being the wallet with no face." I walked to the window, staring at the autumn sky, dull gray and unforgiving. Somewhere out there, people were toasting to love with my champagne, laughing under flowers I unknowingly paid for. And all the while my name was on every bill. The audio came through faint and shaky, like it had been recorded under a table. Harold had passed it to me on a flash drive, smirking like he'd just handed me a lit match. "You didn't get this from me," he said. The file was labeled Rehearsal Speech Final, MP3. I clicked play. Melissa's voice filled the room, syrupy and smug. "We're so excited to start this new chapter. And I just want to say, we've made some hard choices, like cutting out the toxic old generation to make room for something better." Laughter erupted in the background, forks clinked, glasses were raised, toasts were made. But my fingers, they went numb. Toxic old. That's what I'd become. Furniture to be removed before guests arrived. A relic, a joke. I paused the audio and stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like a taunt. Ethan, the boy who used to cling to my shirt after nightmares. The boy who cried the night his mother died and begged me never to leave. He was in that room, laughing. He heard that speech and didn't stop her. I pressed play again, forcing myself to listen. Melissa kept going, talking about new blood, building without baggage. Every word scraped the inside of my skull. She ended with, "Let's raise our glasses to clean slates." Clean slates. I closed the laptop gently, but my jaw clenched until it hurt. "You erased me, Ethan, not just from the ceremony, from your story." I stood and walked to the den, to the old cedar filing cabinet I hadn't touched in months. My hands moved before my thoughts caught up. I pulled out the trust packet, thick, yellowed at the edges. The original contract. I flipped past the signatures, past the distribution tables. My eyes caught something buried near the end. Clause 14b, Discretionary Disbursement Authority. In absence of formal notification of asset usage, grantor retains the right to pause, redirect, or dissolve trust disbursements at any time. My breath caught. Formal notification, they never sent one. No letter, no signature, no form filed, not even an email. I was still the gatekeeper, and they had no idea. The trust was Ethan, not fully, not legally, not yet. Something shifted in me, not rage, not revenge. Resolve. I picked up the phone and dialed Helen. She answered with a warm, familiar sigh. "Rich, been a while." "I need you," I said. "I need to review the trust agreement, urgently." A pause. "Everything all right?" "No," I said, my voice steady, "but it will be." Out the window, the sun dipped behind the trees, casting the room in long, sharp shadows. I stood there a long time, letting the dark settle over me like armor. Helen's office still smelled like old paper and peppermint tea. She wore her usual gray blazer, glasses low on her nose as she skimmed the trust documents. Her brows twitched once, then stayed raised. "Well, Rich," she said, flipping a page, "you may have just stumbled into the best mistake they've made." I leaned forward, meaning. She tapped the clause near the bottom, 14b, the one I'd memorized over the past 2 days. "You still own full control of the fund's disbursement unless you're given formal, written notice of use." Keyword, formal. "They never sent me anything," I said. "No letter, no email, nothing." Helen looked up. "Then that's your leverage. As far as the law is concerned, you're still the one authorizing those payments." I stared at her, pulse thumping in my ears. "If I revoke the disbursement rights," I asked slowly, "before the final payments go through, then the venue, the vendors, the cake lady, none of them get paid." She leaned back. "That whole wedding crumbles like stale cornbread." A bitter chuckle escaped my throat, and I'd be the ghost behind it all. "No," Helen said. "You'd be the legal owner exercising his right." I looked down at the document, my name printed in bold. I had written that name 1,000 times in my life, on school permission slips, mortgage forms, condolence cards, but this one burned with meaning. "What happens if they try to sue?" "They can't," Helen said. "The clause protects you. They failed to notify you, and you never consented to the wedding expenses." "And Ethan?" She tilted her head. "He'll learn a very expensive lesson in paperwork." I closed my eyes. My son. My only child. I thought of him at 12, crying in the hallway when I couldn't afford new shoes. I remembered his voice breaking when he told me he'd make me proud. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Now he had erased me from his life, paraded my money like a trophy, and laughed while they toasted to cutting out the old. I opened my eyes and met Helen's steady gaze. "I want to do it," I said. "Pause the payments, legally, quietly." She nodded once. "We'll file today. They won't know until the invoices bounce." I stood to leave, my limbs heavy but my spine straight. Outside her office, the wind tugged at my coat. I looked up at the sky, gray and wide and waiting. I didn't feel vindicated. Not yet. But something inside me settled. I wasn't powerless, not anymore. The letter sat in my coat pocket, folded 3 times like an old scar. I'd written it slowly, every word carved from something raw. "Ethan, I wish you happiness, even if I wasn't welcome to witness it. Dad." No anger, no plea, just the kind of sentence you write when there's nothing left to fix. I didn't sign it with love. I didn't even sign my full name. Just Dad, like a ghost haunting the edge of the page. Helen filed the suspension forms that morning. She assured me everything would be processed discreetly. Vendors wouldn't find out until the final invoices hit and bounced. I asked her not to notify Ethan yet. "Not until the moment matters," I said. She nodded. That afternoon, I drove to the wedding venue. I told the receptionist I was a delivery vendor there for a walkthrough. She barely looked at my badge, just waved me down the corridor. The place smelled like lavender and starch. White linens were stacked in piles, and chairs stood in perfect rows like soldiers awaiting orders. I kept my head low and my eyes scanning. Crystal centerpieces glinted under soft lights. Tables were set for a feast, forks aligned, name cards written in golden cursive. But not one had mine. I walked past the main dining hall into a quieter room with a photo wall, portraits of Ethan and Melissa smiling in various settings. Their vacations, their engagement party, her parents, her brothers. I moved closer, scanning each photo. Birthday dinners, college memories, family barbecues, Melissa hugging her mother, Ethan with his golf buddies. Then one photo stopped me cold. It was Ethan as a child, 7, maybe 8, on a bicycle, his front tooth missing, his hands raised in triumph. I remember that day. I'd let go of the back wheel and watched him ride for the first time. I'd stood just out of frame, smiling so hard my cheeks hurt. And yet the photo was cropped, just him and the bike, no father, no one holding the seat, just the illusion of a boy who grew up on his own. I backed away, my fingers trembling. "You didn't just cut me out, Ethan. You rewrote the story, so I was never there to begin with." I walked back down the corridor, past servers tying bows on chair backs. A planner brushed past me, muttering about flower arrangements. No one asked my name. No one knew who I was. And in this version of the story, that was exactly how it was supposed to be. When I stepped outside, the sun had dipped low, turning the sky the color of a bruised plum. I stood on the gravel for a moment, the wind pushing against my coat. I reached into my pocket, touched the letter. Then I turned and walked away. The call came at 10:12 a.m. I was sitting on the porch, sipping lukewarm coffee, the kind that tastes more like memory than flavor. The birds were especially loud that morning, like they knew something was about to break. My phone buzzed, unknown number. I answered. "Mr. Caldwell," a woman's voice, breathless. "This is Valerie. I'm the event coordinator for your son's wedding. We have a problem." I didn't respond, just waited. There's been a delay with the venue payment," she stammered. "The caterers are refusing to serve without confirmation. The florist pulled out entirely. They said the final check bounced." My grip on the cup tightened. "I've tried contacting Ethan, but he's not answering. He said you handled the trust disbursement. Can you authorize payment now? We're hours away from guests arriving. I paused, letting the silence stretch. I wasn't invited, I said softly. Ask Ethan. Then I hung up. My hand shook just once, then it stilled. The silence returned, deeper this time, like a blanket pulled tight over a wound. The phone buzzed again, then again. Ethan. Voicemail. Dad, what the hell is going on? Valerie says the venue's unpaid. The cake's not even here. People are arriving and Melissa's having a panic attack. Another call, another message. Look, I don't know what you did, but fix it. Please. This is my wedding day. Don't ruin this for me. I let them pile up. By noon, there were 13 missed calls. By 1:22. Each message shifted in tone: anger, then confusion, then desperation. Dad, please. If this is about the invitation, I'm sorry, okay? Melissa thought it would be awkward, but this is too far. I said nothing. I didn't scream, I didn't gloat, I didn't even cry. I sat on that porch like I had for the past 10 years, watching the wind move through the trees. The world had a rhythm again, and for the first time in weeks, it didn't feel like I was suffocating inside it. Another call, this time his voice cracked. They're saying we can't even walk down the aisle until the deposit clears. Melissa's dad is threatening to sue. Please, just call me. I didn't. The birds chirped on, unbothered. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes, picturing the venue, the panicked faces, the hushed arguments, the towering cake waiting to be cut, but no table beneath it. All I'd done was stop paying. They built a wedding on the bones of a man they buried alive, and never once thought he might rise. I let the sun warm my face. The silence wrapped around me like armor. The video came as a text message, no subject line, just a timestamp clip and a single word from my old friend. Watch. I hesitated, then I tapped play. The live stream was already rolling when the clip began. The venue looked like something out of a glossy bridal magazine. White arches, floral chandeliers, guests seated in polished rows. But no music, no aisle procession, just silence. Ethan stood at the altar, hands fidgeting. Melissa whispered furiously to a planner, her lips tight, eyes darting toward the entrance. The officiant leaned over and murmured something into Ethan's ear. He stiffened. A hush fell over the room. No bride. No vows. No music. Just confusion dressed in tuxedos and heels. I watched Ethan's jaw clench, his fingers curling into fists at his sides. Melissa's father was gesturing wildly from the front row. A groomsman left the altar, phone in hand. The screen froze for a second, then jumped to a later moment. Melissa was finally walking down the aisle, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Ethan looked like he'd swallowed glass. They stood before the officiant, stiff, silent, the applause muted and scattered. When the vows came, they were short, mechanical, as if spoken from behind a wall. I paused the video. That was all I needed. Later that night, social media lit up like dry brush in a windstorm. Bride storms off before vows, chaos at luxury wedding. Insider, unpaid vendors shut down services mid-event. Caldwell Trust dispute, family scandal may be behind wedding collapse. One post had a blurry photo of Ethan, head bowed, tie askew, speaking with security. Another showed Melissa in tears, makeup smeared, being consoled by her maid of honor. And there it was, my name, trending in the comments. Wasn't the Caldwell Trust his dad's? He really froze the account. If my kid did that to me, I'd do worse. I didn't comment. Didn't like, didn't repost. I didn't need to. The message was already sent. Ethan had wanted a father-free wedding, a clean slate. He erased me from the ceremony, the speeches, the photo wall. And in doing so, he built a house of cards, paid for with someone else's name. I gave him the money, the roof, the floor. All I did was pull back what was mine. He wanted a fairy tale. Instead, he got a headline. I closed my phone, set it on the table, and poured myself a drink. The air outside was still. Not a single bird sang. And for once that silence sounded like justice. The envelope was plain. No return address, no fancy seal. Just thick, expensive paper hiding a predictable blade. Inside, a legal notice. The undersigned hereby challenges the discretionary revocation of disbursement control, citing undue influence and financial sabotage. I didn't finish reading it. I slid it across the table to Helen. She smirked. Desperate people file desperate claims. They're accusing me of sabotaging his marriage, I said, barely above a whisper. They sabotaged that wedding themselves. All we did was unplug the lights they were stealing power from. Within a week it was over. Helen dismantled their argument like a house of cards in the wind. Clause 14 be held strong. Every vendor complaint, every bounced invoice, it all led back to one thing: their failure to notify. Legally, I'd done nothing wrong. Morally, that weight stayed heavier. Ethan never called. Not once. Melissa blocked my number, and from what I gathered through whispers and rumors, her family blamed me for the chaos. Not Ethan, not the trust, me. I sat at my writing desk the following Sunday, staring at a blank sheet of paper. My hands trembled slightly, not from age, but from everything else. I picked up the pen. Ethan, I gave you everything I had. You repaid me with silence. This is the only inheritance you'll ever receive from me. No threats, no fury, just the truth. And this time I signed nothing. I folded the letter slowly, like I was wrapping up a memory I could never afford to unwrap again. I sealed the envelope, wrote his name, added the address I knew by heart. And I mailed it. Not because I needed closure. Because I needed the silence to have a voice. There was no joy in any of it, no celebration. I didn't pour a drink or toast to my victory. I didn't tell Harold. I didn't even check if Ethan responded. I didn't want to know. Revenge wasn't loud. It didn't explode. It didn't scream down the hallway. It was quiet. A form filed in a lawyer's office. A bounced check on a wedding day. A letter with no signature. I sat on the porch again that evening. The wind had changed. The air smelled of smoke, someone burning leaves down the road. I watched the sky dim behind the trees, the last light slipping below the horizon like a secret being kept from the world. I leaned back in my chair, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like something was missing. The soil still holds her scent. Lavender, rosemary, the faint trace of cedar mulch she insisted on hauling in herself, even when the doctors told her to rest. This garden, our garden, was the last thing we built together. No trust fund, no contract, just time, sweat, and love buried under every root. I sat in her chair today. Wicker, sun-worn, creaky in the left arm. I never sat here before, not once. It always felt like trespassing, but today it felt like a return. The table beside me was set for one, a chipped glass of iced tea sweating in the evening warmth. No sugar, just how she liked it. I never cared for it much, but I poured it anyway. A breeze stirred the wind chimes she hung beneath the porch beam. They sang softly, off-key but kind. Children's laughter floated from the house next door. A game of tag, maybe. Barefoot feet thudding against grass. High-pitched squeals and shouts. Not my grandchildren, not Ethan. Just someone else's joy drifting into mine. Funny how life continues, even when you're paused. I leaned back and closed my eyes. And I saw him, Ethan, age 7, running through this yard, his shoes untied and a grass stain blooming on his shirt. He tripped near the garden bed and cried until I scooped him up. I remember him clinging to my neck, asking through tears, "You're not gonna leave too, right?" I promised him then, no matter what, I'd stay. And I did, even when I shouldn't have. I opened my eyes slowly, the light now low and amber. Beside me on the table lay a photo I'd printed from a cousin's social media. Ethan and Melissa, wedding day, her in white, him in navy, perfect lighting, perfect smiles, friends behind them, her family, her dog. But not me. I wasn't even a shadow in the background. I picked up the photo, turned it over, nothing written, no memory marked. I lit a match from the tin we kept beneath the chair, same box she used when lighting the citronella candles. The flame curled around the edges of the photo, slow at first, then faster, hungry. Melissa's veil disappeared in an instant. Ethan's smile blackened at the edges. I dropped it into the metal ashtray, watched it finish. No rage, no regret. Just peace. The smoke curled upward and vanished into the sky. No one noticed. No one came running. And that was the justice in it. Not headlines, not lawsuits. Just this silence. This chair. This garden. And me, finally, no longer waiting to be seen.